Before I begin, I will offer some prayers, then we can jump into today's verses. Om Meganatamidanvasya Kinanjana Shalakaya Chakshumilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadanti Swavadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vidantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Virjina Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Sham Hare Krishna Karana Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Banta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishnu Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Om Shri Krishna Prasad Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namah Namaste Saraswati Devi Devavani Prasad Vishesha Sundari Pastati Adisha Tagine Om Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamurire Astapaya Shabhadrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Tamashloke Bhakti Bhagavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, one should offer their respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. We, of course, would also like to offer our respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and his sincere followers, by whose grace we have access to this transcendental wisdom. By regular attendance on classes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So today we have a very wonderful, deeply philosophical verse, and with a lengthy purport. So we'll go ahead and process this, and then we'll try to speak a few thoughts. Okay, text 38. Natma jajananan marisyati naidate so nasiyate savana vivyabhicharinam hi sarvatra shashvar anapai aphalabdi matram prano yatingriyabalena vikalpitam sa. Translation: Brahman, the eternal soul, was never born and will never die, nor does it grow or decay. That spiritual soul is actually the knower of the youth, middle age, and death of the material body. Thus, the soul can be understood to be pure consciousness. existing everywhere at all times and never being destroyed, just as the life air within the body, although one becomes manifest as many in contact with the various material senses, the one soul appears to assume various material designations in contact with the material body. PBT purport. It's a lengthy one. Buckle up. The Vedic aphorism, Sarva Kalv Idam Brahma, everything is Brahman, has been explained in this chapter of the Bhagavatam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the original source of everything. By expanding his internal potency, he manifests the spiritual worlds, which we'll be talking about today. And by expanding his external potency, he manifests the material cosmos. The conditioned living entity is originally part and parcel of the superior internal potency of the Lord, but being in contact with illusion, he falls under the clutches of the external potency. In any case, since everything is an expansion of the potency of the Supreme Brahman, everything is part and parcel of the Lord's spiritual potency. Bayam dvitya biniveshit shata syad isan apetsya viparyayo smriti. Please excuse my Sanskrit. When a living entity thinks that the material world is not part and parcel of the Lord's potency, but is a separate existence, liable to be controlled and enjoyed by the tiny jiva soul, he is under viparya, or a wrong conception, asmrit. Thus, the living entity forgets that the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of everything, everything being an expansion of the Lord. Srila Sridhar Swami has pointed out that although the Lord's external potency is subject to transformations such as birth, growth, decay, and death, one should not foolishly conclude that the Lord's internal potency, the living entity, is also subject to these changes. Both the living entity and material nature are ultimately Brahman, being expansions of the Supreme Brahman. But the Vedas clearly say, Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shuyate. The Lord's potencies are vividha, or multifarious. Thus, according to this verse, Natma Jajana Na Marisyati Nayadate So Na Kisyate. The soul is never born, nor does he die, and he certainly cannot grow or decay like a material body. Although the visible material body passes through boyhood, adolescence, and old age, or although one may take birth as a demigod, human being, plant, or animal, the spirit soul never changes his eternal constitutional position. Rather, he falsely identifies with the external transformations of the material body and thus imposes upon himself a psychological condition called illusion. This miserable illusory experience of seeing oneself transformed and ultimately annihilated by the laws of nature can be nullified by transcendental knowledge of one's eternal status as the superior energy of the Lord. The word sarvacha in this verse should not be foolishly misinterpreted to mean that the individual soul is all-pervading. So this is important where the verse is saying that the soul is existing everywhere at all times. The purport now is addressing that. The word sarvatra in this verse should not be foolishly misinterpreted to mean that the individual jiva soul is all-pervading. The soul is not born, nor does he die. Yet in our present conditioned state, we falsely identify with the birth and death of the body. Therefore, because an all-pervading soul would never fall into illusion, sarvatra cannot indicate that the individual soul is all-pervading. Illusion implies an incomplete understanding of reality, which would not be possible for an all-pervading entity. Therefore, the word sarvatra is understood to mean that the pure spiritual soul exists in all material conditions. I'll read that again. Therefore, the word sarvatra is understood to mean that the pure spiritual soul exists in all material conditions. In deep sleep, for example, consciousness may not overtly be manifest, and yet the spirit soul is understood to be present within the body. Similarly, it is understood from Bhagavad Gita that the spirit soul, Nitya Sarva Gata, may exist even within fire, water, or outer space, since the existence of the soul never depends upon material conditions, but is an eternal fact. The consciousness of the soul is more or less manifest according to the possibilities offered by a particular material situation, just as electric light is manifest in a particular intensity and color according to the bulb available. The electrical energy is one, but it is manifested variously according to material conditions. The argument may be raised that although the spirit soul is pure consciousness, apalabdhi matram, it is our practical experience that consciousness is constantly transformed. If I am thinking of a blue object such as the sky, then my previous thought of a yellow object such as a flower is destroyed. Similarly, if I become aware that I am hungry, then my consciousness of the blue sky is destroyed. In this way, consciousness is constantly being transformed. Srila Sridhar Swami has replied that consciousness itself is eternal, but in contact with the material senses, it may be manifest in various ways. The example of life air is very appropriate. Prana, or the life air, is one, but in contact with the different senses, it is manifest as the power to see, the power to hear, and so on. Similarly, consciousness, being spiritual, is ultimately one, but when in contact with the various senses, it may be perceived in terms of particular sensory functions. But the state of consciousness is an eternal fact that cannot be changed, although it may be temporarily covered by Maya. When one becomes Krishna conscious, he is understood to be Dhira, Dhira Statya Namuyate. At that time, one is no longer subject to bewilderment by falsely identifying his consciousness with the transformations of material nature. From the statement Tat Tvam Asi found in the Chandogya Upanishad, it is to be understood that spiritual knowledge is not impersonal, but entails gradually perceiving this pure spiritual soul within the material body. Just as in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna repeatedly says, Aham, or I. This Vedic aphorism uses the word Tvam, or you, to indicate that just as the absolute truth is the supreme personality of Godhead, just as the absolute truth is the supreme personality of Godhead, the individual spark, or Brahman, Tat, is also an eternal personality, Tvam. Therefore, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is to be understood that the individual spark of Brahman is eternally conscious. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has further pointed out that instead of wasting time trying to understand the truth in its impersonal aspect, which is merely the negation of temporary material variety, one should try to understand oneself to be an eternally conscious entity in the jiva category. In other words, one should understand oneself to be eternally a conscious servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya has quoted the following statement from the Moksha Dharma section of the Mahabharata. Aham hi jiva samyo vai, mai jiva sanatana, maivam tya Dvai anu manvayam dusto jiva mayetiha aham shreyo vidhas yasmin yatadikaram ishvara. Quotes, the living entity known as Jiva is not different from me, for he is my expansion. Thus, the living entity is eternal, as am I, and always exists within me. But you should not artificially think, now I have seen the soul. Rather, I, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will bestow this benediction upon you when you are actually qualified. Unquote. Jai. So once again, we will read the verse and then we will try to share a few things before we open up for questions and comments. Once again, text 38 translation, Brahman, the eternal soul, was never born and will never die, nor does it grow or decay. That spirit soul is actually the knower of the youth, middle age, and death of the material body. Thus, the soul can be understood to be pure consciousness, existing everywhere at all times and never being destroyed, just as the life air within the body, although one, becomes manifest in many in contact with the various material senses. The one soul appears to assume various material designations in contact with the material body. Okay. So quite a deep and lengthy analysis, but today we'll focus on the material world and the spiritual world. So just start in the world there's a question raised, particularly in the field of science as well. One of those questions being, are we alone in this universe? Are we alone in this universe? Here's talking about this idea of consciousness being fully present at every stage of existence. That the soul is nahanyate hanimane sharire, that it doesn't have a beginning, middle, or end, that it does not die when the material body dies. And thus one can ask if there is this consciousness on this planet, is there consciousness other places within this universe? Now, Srila Prabhupada has very confidently declared that this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. And as the purport illuminated, life is existing all throughout this material universe. That even when we look throughout this world, if we just even look over an open grass field, we can see through the lens of the Vedas that there are innumerable souls and thousands of souls pervading all the different landscapes. And through the invocation verse of Sri Upanishad, Om Purnamidam Purnamidam, you can see that that complete whole expands themselves. That conscious source of all reality is completely whole. Everything expands from that conscious source, and because that source is complete, even the material realm comes fully equipped. Whatever the conscious source produces is whole in every way. Despite everything emanating from them, they do not even slightly reduce in quantity, because they are the complete spiritual whole. So everything, although everything emanates from them, because they are the unlimited spiritual whole, they do not deplete even a little bit, which is quite fascinating quality of Krishna. And when we understand more and more about Krishna and more about his qualities, we understand how it's said in the verse, he has these multifarious energies, and that he is thus able to do things that are unable to be perceived or conceived of by us while in the material condition. As the purport stated, the illusory external energy will cover our consciousness, allowing us to even forget our own eternal spiritual identities. But by reconnecting with Krishna, we can awaken the Chit Shakti, Sat Chit Ananda, the Chit Shakti, which is the energy of awareness, of consciousness, of knowledge. And when that becomes awakened, we can begin to more intimately know things as they are. And so by even empirical analysis, one can deduce that there are living entities all throughout the material world. And we have these things confirmed by realized souls who have had that deep awakening within themselves. And even beyond that, we have our shastras, which are speaking how there are not only scientific confirmations that there are living entities all throughout the universe, but many elaborate pastimes and dealings, and basically, you could say, news articles of the goings-ons throughout the universe. So what does this have to do with the spiritual world? We can understand that, as Prabhupada says many times, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. And this is very relevant to us as spiritual practitioners, recognizing that there is a spiritual realm, a spiritual world. Really, a lot of our philosophy is based on this, on the crux that we have an eternal identity. As the purport illuminated, while we're here in this material world, we have a temporary identity, and that identity will end. My monkship will end, my family relationship will end, my skills and accolades or my disqualifications will also end. But what happens when all of that is over? It's not void like we might experience in the material sense. Without all of these material conditions, there still is left the spiritual consciousness, known as the jiva. And it's said that this soul has an eternal relationship with Krishna. And Krishna, beyond being the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the supreme object of love. And thus, just as we can see that there are living entities all throughout this material world, there are also unlimited spiritual entities in the spiritual world. So for today, we'll focus on Vrindavan. When one enters the spiritual world, Vrindavan, everywhere they look, you will see life. And because that entire world, as stated in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anandi Adi Govinda Sarva Karna Karnam, that realm is fully composed of the Hara Prakriti, the spiritual energy, Satchit Ananda. Everyone has a spiritual Vigraha or form. Krishna's form is the source of all, Om Parnamadam Punamida, and we emanate from that original source. And we, in that spiritual world, have our spiritual form. And those forms have unlimited varieties, just as we see the material reflection in this world. That there are trees, there are grass, there is squirrels, and all types of animals, rivers, and mountains, and people, and buildings. And similarly, as we hear described in the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, all of those things are also present in the spiritual world, but they are not composed of apara prakriti, they're not composed of material energy, they are composed of spiritual energy. And thus, if one enters into spiritual Vrindavan, everywhere they look, everything is in everyone. There's an instance where Uddhava literally prays to become a blade of grass in Vrindavan. And this is revealed by our acharyas that every living entity, even the grass, the trees, the river Yamuna, the air itself, everything there is composed of the spiritual energy. And thus that means everything is conscious, everything is in every one. And so the grass has a relationship with Krishna, the trees have a relationship with Krishna, Mother Yashoda has a relationship with Krishna, and we have a relationship with Krishna. And thus this is actually the focal point of our spiritual practice. Bhakti yoga means practicing in such a way that we reawaken that original relationship that we have with Krishna. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, speaks of how there are 5 primary rasas, or relationships, either in Madhurya, conjugal relationship, Vatsalya, a parental relationship, Sakya, a friendly relationship. Dasya, a serviceable relationship. Or Shanta, a reverential relationship. And so our practice, our sadhya, our goal is to reawaken, finding out what is my relationship with Krishna. What is my relationship with Krishna? And our material situation right now is not an indication of what that relationship is. It is through the spiritual practice of hearing about Krishna, speaking about Krishna, appreciating Krishna's qualities. 64 qualities are given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And appreciating these qualities of his kindness, his humility, his genius, that he's a multi-linguist, that he plays the flute, and it steals the heart of the entire universe. When we gradually appreciate these qualities in his person, then it awakens a particular attraction, Krishna, the all-attractive. And gradually, under guidance, we will begin to become attracted to a particular type of relationship. And so this is our sadhya, our goal. Now there's sadhya and sadhana. Sadhana is a practice, but there is no practice without a sadhya, without a goal. Every endeavor has a purpose behind it. Thus, if we all want to practice this art of love, if we want to practice bhakti, then it behooves us to understand what the goal of bhakti is, what the goal of the practice is. That's when we know the goal, then we can actually strive to it. And that striving to it, to attain that goal, that becomes the sadhana. So our goal in bhakti is to awaken our eternal loving relationship with Krishna, whether it's as his lover, whether it's as his parent, whether it's as his friend, whether it's as his servitor, whether it's as one of his cows, or like the flutes, or the trees, or the rivers of Vrindavan. Whatever our eternal relationship is, we want to awaken that. And thus our sadhana is our means of awakening that relationship. We're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, begging, asking, pleading, re-engaging with Krishna in that relationship, begging to have that relationship revealed to us, begging to reawaken, to re-engage in that eternal relationship with Krishna. When we read about Krishna, we're always wanting to think about it in relationship to him, understanding the feelings and emotions of the Brajvasis when they're hearing Krishna's glorifications, how they want to take care of Krishna, the way and the moods in which they want to serve Krishna, their emotions when they're hearing about how Krishna is dancing on the hoods of Kaliya, the terror or fright, understanding, trying to align our hearts with their hearts, following in their footsteps, not imitating, not jumping prematurely, but when we're hearing about the Kirtan, to really hear means to feel what they're feeling. So when we hear about Mother Yashoda fainting upon seeing her most beloved baby boy, Krishna, although he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she is so overcome with Vatsalya Prema, parental love, that's who Krishna is to her. He's more dear to life, more dear than life itself to her. And so to see that object of her love in the cause of Kaliya is far worse than death. But because it is in relationship to Krishna, Krishna is such an Ananda Vigraha. There's bliss. And so even that terror is a form of bliss. And being overwhelmed by such bliss, she faints. So understanding the moods and the emotions in truth, in spiritual truth, then it leaves an impression in our heart. And it may gradually start to awaken a particular attraction towards Krishna in one of these eternal relationships. And this is why, under guidance of our gurus and the Shastra and other sadhus, we can gradually, but surely and certainly awaken this within our hearts. And last point, if I'm wanting to go from New York to California, California is my sadhya. The means in which I get there is my sadhana. And so Once I have my goal clear, yes, I want to go to California. Yes, I want to awaken my relationship with Krishna. The sadhana becomes everything towards reaching that endeavor. And naturally, that means when I'm so much focused on that desire of attaining my goal, I will only be focused on adding things into my life that facilitate my reaching that goal. If I am really desiring to awaken my relationship with Krishna, then my practice becomes very focused on that goal. My chanting becomes focused, my reading becomes focused, my association and my words and dealings with the devotees becomes focused. My offering of prayers becomes focused, my worshiping of the deity, Krishna and his deity Murti becomes focused. And Krishna will reciprocate. As he said, as one approaches me, so I reciprocate, as he says in Bhagavad Gita, and as the purport said at the end of this purport from Madhavacharya, that Krishna is saying, I will bestow this benediction when you desire it. And so when we cultivate this desire that, yes, I want to understand what the residents of Vrindavan, their overflowing love, all of our saints and acharyas glorify Vrindavan as the topmost peak of spiritual love and intensity. What is that bliss? What is my relationship with Krishna? I'm so excited to find out. So when we follow that eagerness and excitement, bhakti opens, it blossoms. Prabhupada has handed us the treasure trove, and now it is in our hands to open that treasure trove and to realize what is with him. So that is simply a tease, but we can go ahead and conclude there. I hope it inspires us all to engage in our bhakti practice with a stronger desire to realize what is our eternal relationship with Krishna, and to thus seek guidance from qualified mentors to help guide us in that endeavor. They can reveal that truth to us because they have realized it. Please forgive me if I spoke anything incorrectly. Please forgive my egregious butchering of my Sanskrit. Luckily, that's not a prerequisite to practice bhakti. Else, I would be taking a very, very, very long time to advance. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhagavatam ki jai. And I'll hand it back over to Anand Bihari Guru.
Thank you very much, Manohara Prabhu. Wonderful class. So you've described how becoming Krishna conscious, reawaken into our original Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. Could you please elaborate a little more on this principle of this gradual process? Does that mean that a little bit of Maya here and there, a little bit of sense gratification here and there is permissible while I'm still not a pure devotee? Or how do we understand this gradual process principle? What's the proper understanding?
Great question. There's principle and there's application. The principle is, according to Srila Rupa Goswami in Nectar of Instruction, or Upadeshamrita, to accept what is favorable and to avoid what is unfavorable. Well, he says that in a different context, but in Nectar of Instruction, he also says, doing that which is uplifting to our service and avoiding those things which are not uplifting to our service. Now, when we apply that to where we're at, that means we have to work at our level, but sincerely. And with that sincerity, Krishna reciprocates. He'll give us the mentors who say, okay, you are at this level, you can chant like this, you can do like this, and it's okay if you're still doing that, just try to gradually improve. For example, even Prabhupada will speak to time, place, circumstance. In one instance, he's saying that even if someone is drinking wine, if they're thinking about Krishna, then they'll gradually progress in Krishna consciousness. Now, as he's saying, for all practitioners who've committed to taking vows that they can drink wine, absolutely not. So it's an application of time, place, circumstance. I've heard another lecture strongly condemning that. If we think that we can drink wine because Prabhupada said that in one context, then it is a show of our sincerity. So under guidance, under mentorship, which is imperative, We can apply these things according to where we are. But beyond adding different drops of Maya, what's most crucial is our desire, our loyam. What do we want? If we cultivate that desire, then everything else falls in context with that. And then nothing else really has to be considered in the sense that we know what is best. If my goal is to get the gold medal in the Olympics, then I know my eating junk food isn't going to help me do that. And I don't have to feel bad about that. I don't have to feel doubtful about that. I know it's not. And thus, if I keep my desire for that goal strong, everything else naturally starts falling away. When you pour milk into the ink cup, naturally everything starts pouring out. And so when you have, junk food, and you feel the effects afterwards the next day, and your practice is sluggish, then you go, okay, like I know this isn't going to help me, and I do want this goal more than anything. So thus, naturally, param jisva nivartante. We organically give up the lower taste for the higher taste. And so it's imperative that we really develop that taste, that we figure out how wonderful is Krishna. And we start to become incensed by that. We start to become so much attracted by that. And thus, when we follow that attraction, naturally everything else falls away. So those are some few thoughts on that.
Thank you, Manohara Prabhu. That was extremely helpful and clear. Would anyone in the temple room like to speak, maybe?
We only have the pujaris.
Pujaris. Okay. Great, dear devotees, please, it's your turn to shine. You can share a reflection or ask
Hare
a question.
Krishna.
Jamuna Jaya.
Thank you, Manohara, for a beautiful class. Just that last point was really making me think of something my Guru Dev always says, and I try to keep to heart, is that the worst thing in life is to have the wrong goal. If we're, in the spiritual world, I always say it's a setup. It's just a setup for suffering and disaster. And if we have anything in there, our goal, it's the worst thing, because we're training, to use the Olympic metaphor, towards it. And instead, if we have the right goal, even if it takes us a long time, at least it's the right goal, and we're headed in the right direction.
Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful. Jai, Jamuna Jai, Ki Jai.
Jai Danyadhara Swami Ki Jai.
Yes, it reminds me, like we experience this, like, yeah, if it's Olympics, they may say, if his friend might say, oh, you don't hang out with us, don't come to the bar with us. And it's like, I'm focused on a goal. I really want to attain this. So everything else is aligning with that. Even experienced, even in college, that, oh, so many things, opportunities to go hang out and do all these things. But I really want this degree. It's really my focus. I really want to get that. But then you're mentioning such the crux there, that if we're not aligned with the proper sadhya, if we're not aligned with the proper goal, then what use are all of our austerities, all of our knowledge, all of our works, all of our even sometimes spiritual practices? If it doesn't awaken that spiritual goal, niyamagraha or niyamagraha, if we have the proper sadhya, the proper clarity, then everything will follow behind that. And it's reminding me of this verse from Srila Prabhupada Saraswati Thakur, that he's saying, what use are all these other things, even different methodologies of attainment, if it doesn't awaken this goal to serve dasa and das, the servants of the one who steals the heart of Srimati Radharani. And even if attaining that goal is going to take me many millions of lifetimes, it doesn't matter, because I recognize that goal is so fantastic. There is nothing I could do for any amount of time that would be without it being worth it. Without it being worth it. There's nothing I could do to take it such a high value. There's nothing I could do to purchase it. And thus anything I do for any amount of time, that's all right. is I hold this still as my topmost goal and topmost desire. So let me move in such a way to attain to it. And by Krishna's grace, by Prabhupada's grace, by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's grace, that which is so valuable, nothing can purchase it, is being given freely. This is amazing. It's being given freely.
I love how you just spoke. You reminded me of how the Brahmins in the Wives of the Brahmins tale, said, "To hell with our this, to hell with our that," because that's a case of someone's missing the goal. They're like missing the goal for the sacrifice, and their wives were really hitting the mark. So when you said it that way, I was like, "Oh, that's what they say. To hell with this, to hell with this. We missed the mark." So,
Absolutely.
here comes the
Absolutely.
gotcha.
Thank you so much. Looks like we're about to have darshan. But yes, when we have that goal clear, particularly as mentioned in Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami, it keeps our focal point clear. Even our spiritual practices become realigned with our ultimate goal. Thank you very much. Kanchara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Vishiratnam Mudida. Chantra Bhagavan ki jai.
Manohara Prabhu ki jai. Dear devotees, if you can, please turn on your cameras. Thank you.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can obtain pure devotion to service. I bow down to the lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering, gain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified, words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From Him ecstatic prema emanates, and by Him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and the Lord and master of the devotees. Oh, Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. May your fame be spread all over the three worlds.
Temple Room Ki Jai. Dear devotees, welcome to the Afterglow. Would anyone like to speak? Would anyone like to chant and dance? Sadhvi, you want to dance? No? Okay. All right. Isaiah, Annabelle, Sage, Sky, Marshall, please turn on your cameras.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nice. Thank you very much. Sky, Sage, Annabelle, Isaiah, thank you for sharing your realizations from class. It's perfect.
Bye.
Bye. Manohara Prabhu, thank you so much for staying over time with us. We didn't have any corrections for you. Sorry. So we did our morning chants. If you have anything profound to say, any concluding remarks, please.
Just love Krishna.
How wonderful is
How do I
Krishna's
buy?
own? What's that? Hold it. The two of you speaking at the same time.
Just love Krishna.
Love
How
Krishna.
wonderful is Krishna.
Okay. Thank you very much, Manohara Prabhu. Okay. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Happy Sunday, everybody. Go to the temple. Dance, sweat for Krishna. Gaura Bhaktivinoda Prabhu. Chant Hare Krishna and love Krishna. And come again tomorrow. We're happy to see you. Hare Krishna. Sage, Sky. Can I see your toys? Can you show me your favorite toy? Sage, what's her name?
Watermelon. Watermelon.
Wonderland.
Watermelon.
Watermelon. Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Oh.
Great.
Do you think she's hungry?
Watermelon is hungry. Give her some prasadam. Okay. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for your association. Hold it. Who's that? Oh, prasadam, prasadam. That's right. That's right. That's right.